Alright, this podcast is for RF4, which is I can decipher the difference between an independent and dependent variable. Now, we've talked about this a little bit in science class, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail here. Now, first off, a variable is something that gets changed. A control is something that remains the same. Typically, in scientific experiments, there are two variables, one that you control and one that is the result. So the first one is the independent variable. The independent variable is the cause. It is the one thing that is being changed in the experiment. The variable makes one test independent of another test. On a graph, it's typically the x-axis. So if we were to be graphing this, the x-axis would be our independent variable. So therefore, our y-axis would be our dependent variable. So the dependent variable is the effect. It is the result. It is what is being measured. So again, looking at this, the independent is the cause. It's the one thing that's being changed. And the dependent is the effect, what is being measured. So this depends on what you change. Again, on the graph, it would be the y-axis. So the independent variable causes the dependent variable to change. That's an important statement there. The independent variable causes the dependent variable to change. So as we go through a few examples, that's something we're going to look for. What is causing the change? Okay, so number one, in the following statements, identify the independent variable. So the temperature of the water was measured at different depths of the lake. The temperature of the water was measured at different depths of the lake. So I would say that our two variables we're looking at here is the temperature and the depth of the lake. Okay, so thinking to yourself, what happens the deeper you go into the water? So I'm going to rewrite this. The temperature depends on the depth of the lake. So the temperature depends on the depth of the lake. Okay, so we're dealing with the temperature and the depth of the lake. So what is changing? What is changing as a result of the other? What is changing? Okay, so the temperature is changing because we are going deeper into the lake. So the independent variable again, looking back at this statement, the independent causes the dependent variable to change. So the depth because the depth changes, the dependent variable, it causes the temperature to change. So because the depth changes, it's causing the temperature to change. So cause and effect. Let's look at the second statement. The amount of time you study will make a positive difference on your next test score. So our two variables that we're looking at, the amount of time and our test score. So our test score depends on amount of time studied. So looking back at this statement, the independent variable causes the dependent variable to change. So therefore, the independent variable would be amount of time. And the dependent variable would be test score. Okay? All right, so sometimes it's hard, but if you reword it into what depends on the other and the cause and effect, it's a little bit easier. Okay, so I want you to try these 3 problems on your own. These 3 problems on your own. And that concludes the podcast.